I'm going to start just with a brief, and I promise it will be brief, presentation. I've got a number of questions that after last week and between last week and this week, and I realized I probably should have started last week with this because not everybody's exactly on the same page. And for some of you, this is going to feel like review, and for some of you, it may feel new. Over-communicate clarity, right? That's my goal. So we're going to see if this thing works. Oh, it does. Oh, it does. There we are. How we got here, a brief historical sketch. I put as many little smiley face guys on here to make it as simple seeming as possible. But the question I keep asking is, keep hearing, is, why are we having this conversation? Why are we having it now? How did we get here? I was very surprised. And I just want to give just a quick, brief sketch. This is kind of from my perspective, more than it is. And so this, if there are errors in this, I'm not an inerrant person. All right? So how we got here. First, church conflict is nothing new. Okay? So how did we get here? Well, it starts with Adam and Eve and a snake in the garden. Right? You go through a whole lot of scripture and you realize there is nothing new about different people in churches having different understandings of how to follow God. It is interesting to me that the very first argument listed in scripture is between Cain and Abel, and it's about worship. Right? So this is nothing new. But we demonstrate the gospel by loving one another through difficult times. Okay? So don't be scared by this. Don't be scared that we're having this conversation. We actually have an opportunity to ask, what is the gospel right now, and how can we demonstrate it right now? That's good news. Okay? This is not scary. We can do this. Now, let's talk about history. Presbyterian history is sometimes told, this is sort of how it's told in my church history class, kind of like this, okay? There's the one line of real Presbyterians, and that's us. And there are a couple of those little splinter groups that come off to the sides, and that's them. All right? But if you just look at a basic Presbyterian history textbook, that's not quite true. In fact, if you look on our website, the PCUSA website, Presbyterian history, just the lines look like this. Okay? That's out of the textbook. That's off our website. A lot of different lines going in, a lot of different lines going out. I'm not going to claim that's a beautiful thing, guys. All right? Our family, it's less of a family tree and more of a family peat bog. Okay? But that's what it looks like. And so here's the deal. Westminster, there's where Westminster is on that line, if you want to follow that. We were part of one of it. We joined, we were founded just as there was one foundation going on, and etc. All right? Now, here's 20th century Presbyterianism. I promise this will be quick for those of you who don't really like history, and too quick for those of you who do. I wanted to portray this as sort of a seesaw here, okay, of trying to find balance. At the beginning of the sort of in the year 1900, all right, sort of before the 20th century, you had a wide diversity of Presbyterians. Okay, you have real progressives on one side, you have real Calvinist fundamentalists on the other side, and all of those are in Presbyterians. There were actually 10 Presbyterian denominations at that time. They were split aside mostly by culture. There were Welsh people, and there were, Southerners and Northerners, sort of different Cumberlands. There were different cultures, okay? 10 Presbyterian denominations in 1900, a real diversity among those. And Westminster, I think it's pretty fair to say, is a pretty moderate congregation. Would you all agree with that? We have some diversity, but we're not a whole lot of fundamentalists here, and not a whole lot of real left-wingers here. We have a diversity of groups that are fairly moderate within that range of American Christianity. Is that pretty fair to say? That's my sense of this congregation. So here's what we get, though. We had several unifications, all right? Several of those denominations joined together, like 4 different times, creating a whole blizzard of acronyms. The UPNA, the second EP, there's a bunch of different acronyms. But here, it didn't change the balance a whole lot. Okay? A lot of these groups were fairly diverse groups joining other similarly diverse groups. Does that make sense? The unifications didn't change the balance. But we did have several church splits in addition to some of the unifications. And that did change the balance for the history of what Westminster is a part of. Okay, if you follow the line that Westminster is a part of. In the 1936, the sort of fundamentalist Calvinist groups, the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, left over being Orthodox fundamentalist Calvinists. They really jumped off the right-hand end of the seesaw, okay, which caused a little bit of a tilt. And then we had in '73 the Presbyterian Church in America left as well, and so you still have some on the far right, but not as many, and it tilts the seesaw a little bit more. And then the Evangelical Presbyterian Church in '81. Again, you still have some people on the right hand of the seesaw, but not as many. And so you find that the seesaw is tilting over time. And this is clear in church splits, but it's also true in individuals leaving congregations and choosing which congregation to be a part of. So the seesaw has been moving through the 20th century. It creates a strong net effect. All right, the PCUSA is less diverse than it was. This group that we're currently a part of is less diverse than we used to have a broad diversity. There's also another factor that some elements, especially on the left, have wanted to tilt us further. See the little picket signs? I made that up myself. No, actually, Chris helped with that. No, but so you have people who are working to tilt, and here's the effect that we've had is that over the 20th century, in, I guess, for lack of a better term, our line in that great peat bog, you have a PCUSA currently that is far less diverse than it used to be. And that's because traditionally the right have left and the left have played power politics. And I'm not going to say one of those is better or worse than the other one. That's just sort of the way those have played out. But the net effect has been a seesaw that tilts. And it's really quite tilted now. And that seesaw is not going to tilt back. Right? That you can't just jump on the right-hand side of the seesaw and get it to tilt back. That's the way the seesaw is right now. And is going to be for the foreseeable future. So that's kind of where we are. Now, and again, like I said, there are some groups who are trying to jump on their side of the seesaw, and some groups who are just leaving. Well, where we fit in Westminster, and again, we're still in the middle here, right? But look what's happened. We used to be in the middle, or mentally anyway, because we didn't exist in 1900, in the middle of a fairly broad, diverse group. Now we look like we're on the right end of something, but we're not. Does that make sense? We're still a moderate, diverse congregation in a group that isn't as diverse as it used to be, and as moderate as it used to be. And I think I just want to say right out, I grieve that, but we need to recognize that. That's why we're having the conversation. All right. So, what do we do about that? In 2011, people asked, "What's the fellowship? What's that about?" A group of Presbyterian, PCUSA Presbyterians, got together and said, look, we're not going to play. At first, they were saying, we don't want to leave. And we also don't want to play the power politics game. We want to do something different. We want to operate in a new way. And that new way is the Fellowship of Presbyterians. The idea is we want to collaborate together. And what they said is they're trying to claim the center. So many people on the left have portrayed the fellowship as a right-wing group. It is not at all a right-wing group. The Presbyterian Coalition is a right-wing group. The Presbyterian Fellowship is not. It is doing its best to claim the center of who Presbyterians are. And to claim the center, well, first, we want to have clear essential tenets. But based on Scripture, but we don't want to have strict subscriptionism to 1600s Calvinism. Okay, so those other three more conservative groups don't have a wide diversity of confessions. They all hold to the Westminster Confession of Faith, which was written in 1647-ish. Okay, with its double predestination and all the things that 1647 Calvinism said. It's one of our confessions in the PCUSA, but it's not the only one. And they say we don't want to hold to just one 1647 document. We want to hold to some clear essential tenets, but based on Scripture, not just that. Clear accountability to one another. Pastors to pastors, congregations to congregations. We want to hold each other accountable to living out the gospel, but we don't want an overbearing authority structure. We don't want a large hierarchical structure. We don't want all of the sort of the corporate bureaucracy that we get in most denominations. We want it, because that structure is based on a certain understanding of politics, a certain game of politics they didn't want to play. And third, we want to have a clear missional calling, holding both service and evangelism, not either or. That so often the conservatives talk about evangelism and the progressives talk about service, and what the fellowship says is we really do need both. They need each other. You got to do both, or you're not doing mission. So this is what the fellowship was about. And a lot of people were really excited about that. You heard Judy Miller's excitement about that last time. But here's the problem. Some people in that group still were wanting to, as the seesaw keeps tilting, some of the people in that fellowship group are still talking about leaving PCUSA. They don't want to be on the right side of something leaning left, even though they consider themselves moderates. Does that make sense? Let me just highlight this. We are not at a point anymore where we're talking about a bunch of conservatives leaving a denomination. We're at a point where moderate congregations like Westminster all over the country are having this conversation. Right? Moderate congregations like Menlo Park in the Bay Area, like University Pres in Seattle, like Peachtree Pres in Atlanta, like Memorial Drive in Houston. If you know these are flagship churches in the PCUSA, have been for years, and now they're asking, do we even belong to this fleet anymore? This is tragic, guys. I need to highlight this. I am not happy that we're here. But that's where we are, is where the moderates now, it's people in the middle are with question marks over their heads. Even though they still have smiley faces. Because we're all still saved, right? You know, I got to say this, we're all still Christians. Even the people on the left and the right, we're all. So this is people who want to uphold Scripture, but they're not. They don't feel like they fit in the groups that have left off on the right. They don't feel like they fit in the 1600 Calvinism. They still want to do all those fellowship things, but they don't know where to go or where to stay. And so what happened was they formed a new the covenant order, the ECO. And the word order means we're not a traditional denomination. It's really like a monastic order. Here are the things we're going to agree to together. We're going to hold on to these essential tenets. We're going to hold on to keeping each other accountable. We're going to hold on to doing mission, both service and evangelism. We're going to try to do that together. But it's basically the fellowship idea on a denominational platform, right? For the people who are trying to hold a smaller but balanced denomination, sort of in the middle, if that makes sense. Is that a tenable idea long term? We don't know. It just started. We've got to say that. But that's the idea that they're doing. So we have still the Fellowship of Presbyterians is a group of people, including the people in the ECO and a bunch of people in the PCUSA. This sort of the moderate evangelical set in the PCUSA. There are some people on the right of this in the PCUSA. There's still a small group of people who don't think the fellowship is conservative enough. And then that's true. And you know what? It's not for everybody. It's really not. It is for us. You know, it fits us well. So where's Westminster in all this? Well, we're that girl in the middle with a question mark over her head right now. Okay? We're a part of the fellowship. We're a part of the PCUSA. A couple things. We're not a part of the ECO, but we have a question mark over our heads. A couple things to say about that. First, the seesaw's not coming back. You know, we just need to recognize that. If the choice is, do we want to stay in the PCUSA as part of the fellowship, or do we want to seek membership in a different Presbyterian denomination like the ECO? The EPCs is still a possibility for us, especially because there are other EPC churches around here. We would be in the left-turn side of the EPC by being a moderate congregation. Does that make sense? Because they're more conservative, their seesaw is much more lean to the right. We'd end up being on the left side of that. Or do we want to stay in the PCUSA with the understanding, and we also have to say, you notice as the seesaw moves back and forth, it doesn't change the height of the middle, right? We just have to recognize whatever choice we make is not going to change the teachings at Westminster. We're going to stay as true to sola scriptura as I am able to do. I'm fallible, I'm not sinless, but I'm going to do the best I can. And that's true of our other pastors and elders as well. So I think someone pointed out last week, we're not talking about making massive changes to what does Westminster teach, one way or the other. We're use this word stationary. It also is relationships with other Christians, structural relationships. Those things are significant, but we're not talking about changing what Westminster does or what Westminster teaches. We're talking about with whom are we in mission partnerships, right? Who are we doing mission with? What group are we a part of? With the understanding that we're all a part of the one church. We're all those little smiley faces because we are all people who are sinners saved by the grace of God alone. Right? So that's the question before us: is which of these groups do we want to seek a part of? And the process, the direct question before us is: do we even enter the conversation with the presbytery right now to talk about that or not? That's the question before us. Okay? The session will take a vote on whether to enter the conversation with the presbytery or not. That's the next step. We're not voting today on whether to leave the PCUSA or not. I just want to be clear on that. We're talking about, today just talking, whether to start the process, the conversation with the presbytery. Let me say one other thing. The traditional Presbyterian way of doing business has been voting. You vote yes or you vote no. And when you have a yes or no vote, some people win and some people lose. I find that divisive. It's been divisive. I think some of the problems we've been facing are because we use those yes and no votes. We have winners and losers. And some people fight really, really hard to win, and other people say, I'm just going to quit playing that game. As a congregation, I want to make a decision together. I want to do that by listening to one another. That's why we're having these sessions. We might need more of them. We might need more listening, more conversation. I don't think we can get to 100% consensus, but I do want to get to a point where we can all say, I believe that everyone in this conversation really is a Christian who really is seeking God's will, and I really do respect them, and we are one church together.